I never told anyone what I found in the crawl space. Not the landlord. Not my brother. Not even the therapist I saw for 3 sessions before ghosting her like a coward. But I know what I saw, and I know who put it there. It was hers. Josie's. Even though she was long gone by then. Even though her name hadn't been on the lease in over a year. Even though I had told myself, sworn to myself, that I was done thinking about her. I opened that panel behind the water heater, pulled out the dusty storage bin wedged between rusted pipes and spider webs, and there it was. A black velvet box. Inside it, a necklace I never gave her. It was the one I'd bought the day after she said she needed space. I'd planned to give it to her if she came back. It wasn't expensive. Just a silver locket with a photo of us from New Year's Eve, 2021. I remember the exact moment I printed that photo. The printer jammed. I had to crop my own face down to fit the shape of the heart. But I never gave it to her. She left, and I packed the locket away in a box marked tools, buried under cables and junk chargers, and a cracked flashlight. Except that's not where it ended up. It ended up in that crawl space. And I never put it there. That's how I knew she'd been back. Inside my house. Long after I thought she had forgotten me. Long after I thought she'd found someone else. Long after I moved on. Or at least tried to. Because Josie didn't just disappear. She evaporated. No warning. No bags. No slammed doors. Just gone. I came home one evening, and every trace of her was wiped clean. Her coat. Her shoes. Her ridiculous cereal collection. Her laugh in the walls. And worst of all, no note. I used to beg for a note. Even a cruel one. Something to explain how someone who once held my face in her hands and said, "You're my whole sky," could vanish like smoke. I assumed she'd left the state. Maybe changed her number. Maybe got married. Maybe joined a cult. I had all the theories. Until the knock. It happened 772 days after she vanished. That's not a guess. I counted. Every morning. Every night. First like a ritual, then like a curse. And then as she knocked. 3 soft taps. Like a ghost unsure it still belonged to the living. When I opened the door, I swear to you, I thought I was hallucinating. She looked almost the same. Hair longer. Eyes darker. Same scar above her lip where she'd once dropped a curling iron. But she wasn't crying. I was. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't say sorry. She didn't ask how I'd been. All she said was, "I know what you found." And I swear to God, my blood turned to ice. Because the necklace wasn't the only thing in that crawl space. And what I found next made me realize I never really knew her at all. I didn't say anything right away. Just stared at her like I was trying to remember a dream I'd forgotten halfway through brushing my teeth. Josie was standing there like she belonged, like she hadn't evaporated 2 years ago without a single goodbye, like she hadn't deleted our entire life with one silent keystroke. I hated how fast my body remembered her. The scent of her shampoo hit me first, lavender and something sweet I could never pronounce. Then came the memory of how she used to steal my hoodies and leave chapstick in every drawer. My mouth opened, but no words came. She didn't flinch. She looked at me like she'd already played this moment out in her head 1,000 times and was just waiting for me to catch up. She pointed toward the inside of the house. "Can I come in?" I should have said no. I should have shut the door and locked it and thrown my phone into a lake. But I stepped aside like an idiot, because that's what you do when the person who broke you walks in with unfinished sentences in their eyes. She sat on the same couch she used to cry on. Didn't even ask. Just lowered herself like gravity hadn't changed since she left. Meanwhile, I stood there like a guest in my own home, heart pounding, jaw tight, mind screaming. "You found the box," she said finally. Not a question, just a statement. Like she already knew exactly when I'd found it, what I did afterward, and what thoughts kept me awake since. I nodded slowly. "How long were you in my house?" Her eyes dropped to her hands. "Not long. Just once. I had to see if it was still there." It. Not the locket. Not the memory. Just it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I sat down across from her and said the only thing that kept looping in my brain. "You left that box in the crawl space. Why?" She didn't answer right away. The silence stretched so long I thought she might bolt again. Then she looked up, and I swear, I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. Something had shifted. Hardened. "You thought I just left you, didn't you?" she said. "You thought I walked out because I stopped loving you." I blinked. "Didn't you?" "No," she said. "I left to protect you." And that's when I knew. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was about something buried. Josie reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Yellowed, wrinkled, edges torn. She slid it across the coffee table like it was made of glass. I didn't touch it. My hands were trembling. What is this? It's the reason I left. I finally picked it up and opened it. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't an apology. It was a death certificate. Name, Miles Connor. Date of death, January 14th, 2022. Cause, undetermined. I didn't recognize the name. Never heard her mention it. Didn't know who he was. She watched my confusion turn to dread. Miles was my brother, she said softly. You didn't know about him because I never told you. I couldn't. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the air had thickened. What happened to him? She shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. They say overdose. But he didn't use. He never touched anything. I think it was meant to look that way. I stared at her, completely lost. What does this have to do with the box? With the crawl space? With us? She leaned forward. Because before he died, he gave me something. Something people didn't want him to have. And I hid it in your house. I felt my stomach twist. You mean the locket? She smiled, but it was hollow. Clint, I never saw that locket before. That wasn't what I left behind. My blood ran cold. My chest went tight. There's something else in that crawl space. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because in that moment, I realized I'd only opened one of the boxes. There was another, and it was still down there, waiting. I didn't sleep that night. Josie was gone by then, again. She only stayed long enough to hand me that death certificate and drop her little verbal grenade before quietly walking out the door like it was just another Tuesday. No answers. No explanations. Just silence and a tight-lipped expression that made it clear I wasn't ready to know everything. Not yet. But the crawl space was still there. And so was the box she didn't mean for me to find. It haunted me. Not in a spooky, ghost-in-the-closet kind of way. No, this was worse. It was the kind of haunting that whispers at the back of your neck when the house is too quiet, when the wind sounds like a voice you almost recognize. I sat on the floor for hours, staring at that panel behind the heater, asking myself 1,000 versions of the same question. What the hell did she leave in there? And why me? Around 3 a.m., I cracked. I grabbed my flashlight, pulled on a hoodie, and pried the panel open with a screwdriver that still had rust on it from the last time I tried to fix my sink. The crawl space was cold, much colder than it should have been in spring. I crawled in slowly, careful not to breathe too deeply. The air smelled like old wood, metal, and something else, faint but sharp, like pennies soaked in vinegar. And then I saw it. A second bin, smaller, taped shut, black duct tape, 3 thick layers, wrapped like it had been sealed by someone who didn't want it opened. This wasn't some forgotten box of Christmas decorations. My hands were already shaking when I reached out, pulled it toward me, and slid backwards out of the crawl space like a man handling a bomb he didn't know how to defuse. I sat there for a full minute, breathing hard, heart punching through my ribs, before I finally peeled back the first layer of tape. Then the second, then the third. Inside was a manila folder. Thick, overstuffed, like it had been crammed full in a hurry. I opened it. What I found didn't make sense at first. Receipts, photos, printed emails, maps with locations circled in red, a hand-drawn sketch of what looked like a school floor plan. All of it felt like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't been invited to solve. But what caught my attention, what made my mouth go dry, was a single photo near the bottom of the stack. It was of me. Not a selfie. Not a picture I'd ever posed for. It was me coming out of my old job at Baxter's Auto Garage, wearing that ratty gray beanie I used to live in. I recognized the background instantly, the rusted-out ice machine, the crooked NO smoking sign. Whoever took that photo had been watching me, closely, and recently. I stared at it for what felt like hours before flipping it over. On the back, written in black ink, were 4 words. Does he even know? The room swam. My vision blurred. For a second I thought I was going to pass out. I dropped the photo and staggered to the sink to splash water on my face. My reflection looked pale, hollow, like I'd been drained. I was shaking again. I went back to the bin and checked every inch of it. There was something else taped to the inside lid. A USB drive. I hesitated. Then I plugged it into my laptop with the same caution you'd use when defusing explosives. The drive had only one video file. No title, no context, just a timestamp, Dated 6 weeks after she left me. I clicked play. At first, it was static. Then darkness. Then a grainy image flickered to life. A basement. I recognized it instantly. Ours. The old apartment over the bakery. That stupid teal wall in the background. A man was standing in front of it, looking straight into the camera. I didn't recognize him. Mid-30s. Sharp jaw. Leather jacket. Clean shaven. He looked angry. And scared. And then, Josie stepped into frame. She wasn't crying. She wasn't smiling. She was stone cold. The man said something I couldn't hear. The audio was damaged. But I saw Josie shake her head. Then she leaned in and whispered something into his ear. The man's face changed. Horror. Pure, paralyzing horror. He tried to back away. And then, the screen cut to black. Just like that. I stared at the laptop like it owed me answers. Replayed the video. Same thing. Every time. Ending at that exact moment. No context. No follow-up. But that look on the man's face? It's burned into my brain. Something happened after she left. Something involving him. Something she wasn't supposed to be part of. And now, somehow, I was part of it too. I didn't sleep for 2 days. Not in the dramatic, movie montage kind of way. I mean, I literally couldn't shut my eyes without seeing his face. That man in the video. That look of panic as Josie leaned in and whispered God knows what into his ear. The terror that rippled across his expression, it wasn't fake. It wasn't exaggerated. I've worked on engines for 12 years, rebuilt totaled wrecks from scratch, and I've never seen a machine malfunction the way that man did in that single moment. Whatever she said, it broke him. And now I couldn't stop wondering why. I must have watched that clip 24 times. Tried enhancing the audio with free online tools. Ran it through editing software I barely knew how to use. Nothing worked. The sound was shredded. Like someone had intentionally corrupted the file. All I had were images. Frozen moments. And questions. And then I did something stupid. I called her. I shouldn't have. I knew that. But when you've been living inside your own head for 48 hours, every bad idea starts sounding like a solution. So I dialed the number she used to have, expecting it to be disconnected, and nearly dropped the phone when I heard her voice. Clint. Not surprised. Not angry. Just tired. Who is he? I asked. The guy in the video. Who is he? And what did you say to him? She went silent. I could hear traffic in the background. Maybe wind. A dog barking in the distance. Where are you? I added, my voice breaking. Josie, what the hell is going on? Don't go to the police, she said, suddenly sharp. Whatever you do, Clint, don't talk to anyone about what you found. Promise me. I don't even know what I found. I know, she said softer now. But they do. My mouth went dry. Who's they? She hung up. Just like that. I stood in my kitchen, phone still in my hand, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. My cat, Pancake, stared at me from the window like he had questions too. That night, I opened the manila folder again. This time, I looked at everything carefully, one item at a time, trying to connect dots that didn't want to be connected. The receipts were all from places in my town, gas stations, pharmacies, diners. Most were dated within a 2-week period. All cash transactions. The names scribbled on top, Derek, Derek C., and DC, repeated across multiple documents. Was that his name? Then I found it. A partially torn envelope. Postmarked 6 months ago. Addressed to someone named Derek Conley. There it was. The man in the video had a name. The return address was out of state, a small P.O. box in Indiana. I Googled it. Nothing came up. But the handwriting on the envelope matched Josie's. I was sure of it. I'd seen it on birthday cards. On sticky notes left on my mirror. That curvy lowercase s was burned into my brain. Which meant Josie had sent him something. Recently. Long after she disappeared. Which meant she never really disappeared at all. She just went underground. Off-grid. And this man, Derek, had something to do with it. The next morning, I took the envelope and drove to the library to use one of the public computers. I didn't want to risk using mine again. I didn't know who was watching, or if anyone even was, but the pit in my stomach told me not to take any chances. I searched for Derek Conley. Nothing criminal came up. No mugshots. No news stories. But I found an obituary. He was dead. Died 5 months ago. No photo. No funeral information. Just a name, a date, and a generic message. Derek will be remembered by those who knew him best. It was like he'd been erased. I sat there, blinking at the screen, while rising in my throat. Who was this man? Why was Josie meeting with him in secret? Why did she whisper something that made him look like he'd seen death itself? And now, why was he dead? Then I remembered the question on the back of the photo. Does he even know? No, I didn't. But something told me I was about to find out, whether I wanted to or not. Because when I got home that afternoon, there was something shoved under my front door. A white envelope. No return address. My name written in thick black ink. Inside, there was only one thing. A photo of Josie and Derek, standing outside my house. From 2 years ago, before she ever left. I stared at the photo in my hands for a long time, long after my fingers had gone numb from gripping the edges. It wasn't blurry. It wasn't edited. It was crystal clear, too clear. Josie, standing just behind Derek, both of them looking up toward my window like they were waiting for me to come out and catch them. She had a coffee cup in her hand. He was holding what looked like a clipboard. Their body language wasn't romantic. It wasn't even casual. It was formal, cold, like business. That was the part that made me sick. Because for the first time since she vanished, I started to wonder if Josie ever loved me at all, or if I was just a name on someone's checklist. I flipped the photo over. Nothing written on the back this time. But the envelope, the one it came in, was sealed with red wax. A circle imprint. I squinted at it under the kitchen light. It was an emblem of some kind. Looked like a snake curling into its own mouth. Not a design I'd ever seen in real life. Only the kind you might see in some obscure thriller movie where the cult turns out to be your next-door neighbor. I tossed it on the counter and backed away from it like it might bite. That's when I noticed it. The cupboard door near the fridge, it was open. Just a crack. I never leave it open. I live alone. I double-check locks. I unplug appliances when I go out for more than 30 minutes. I'm a creature of habit, the cautious kind. But that cupboard, the one where I kept all my important documents, was ajar. And suddenly I wasn't sure if I had left it that way, or if someone had been here while I was at the library. I grabbed a flashlight and did a sweep of the whole house, top to bottom. Nothing seemed missing. Nothing seemed moved. But that was the thing, wasn't it? If someone knew what they were doing, they'd make it look like nothing ever happened. They'd slip in, take what they needed, and disappear like smoke. That's when I remembered the crawl space. I went straight to it. The second bin, the one with the manila folder and the USB, was gone. It was just gone. My stomach dropped, and I stood there on my knees, staring into that cold black space beneath the floor, trying to convince myself I had moved it and forgotten. But I hadn't. I would never. I remember exactly how I left it. Taped shut again, tucked back into the far left corner, behind the PVC pipe. I stood there, breathing heavy, hands clenched, hearing the faint hum of the refrigerator like it was screaming at me. I wasn't safe. Not in my own home. Not anymore. I sat on the floor for what felt like an hour, phone in my hand, debating whether to call the police. But what would I say? Hi, someone broke into my house and stole a mystery box my ex-girlfriend left behind after disappearing for 2 years. Yeah, that would go well. So I did nothing. Again, just like I did when she left. And that's when I realized, that's what they're counting on. Whoever they are. They're betting on me doing nothing. On me being the quiet guy. The pushover. The emotional wreck who can barely look people in the eye, let alone stand up to a threat. Josie knew that too. She knew I'd freeze. She'd seen it before, when we were robbed once at a gas station in Dayton. She yelled at the guy. I just stood there, shaking. I've always hated that about myself. So that night, instead of sleeping, I watched the front door. I pulled a chair up by the window and just sat there in the dark, watching the street. Watching the wind mess with the leaves. Watching every pair of headlights that passed like they were aiming for me. I must have dozed off around 4 a.m. And when I woke up, sometime after 6, there was a small box sitting on my doorstep, wrapped in brown paper. No name. No return address. I opened it right there on the porch, hands trembling, throat dry. Inside was a Polaroid. Not a new one, an old one. The color was faded at the edges. But the subject? It was a picture of me. In my backyard. Wearing the same hoodie I had on now. But the thing that sent shivers up my spine? In the corner of the photo, almost out of frame, Josie was standing behind me, smiling. And I swear on my life, that photo was taken yesterday. I sat on the floor of my kitchen for 3 hours with that Polaroid in my lap. I kept turning it over like maybe something new would appear, a message, a code, an explanation, but it was just blank, faded on the edges, torn on one corner. I kept thinking about the timestamp. There wasn't one printed on the photo, but the sun in the background, the leaves in the tree, the hoodie I was wearing, they all lined up with yesterday. I had been standing in my backyard. Alone, I thought, drinking coffee, staring at the fence that needed repair. Just like every other meaningless morning since Josie came back. But now I knew I hadn't been alone. She had been there, just out of sight. And someone had taken that picture. I hadn't heard a camera. I hadn't felt watched. I hadn't noticed anything at all. And that terrified me more than the photo itself. The feeling of being watched, it doesn't hit you right away. It creeps. It seeps into your bones like cold. Suddenly, every movement feels exposed. Every sound behind you seems closer than it should be. I locked the doors, closed the blinds, shut off the lights. But that didn't help. The paranoia wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was inside me now. That night, I dreamed of the crawl space. Only in the dream, it went deeper, much deeper, endless. Like I kept crawling, and the walls started to close in, and Josie's voice echoed all around me, whispering things I couldn't understand. When I woke up, drenched in sweat, gasping, I had a thought that made my blood run cold. What if this didn't start with her? What if Josie was a symptom, not the cause? What if everything I'd experienced, the confusion, the gaps in memory, the strange coincidences, went back further than I thought? That morning, I called my older brother, Gavin. We don't talk much. He's a no-nonsense type, the kind of guy who thinks therapy is a scam and feelings are optional. But he's also the only person who's known me my whole life. I figured if anyone could help me put the puzzle together, it'd be him. When he answered, I didn't ease into it. Did anything weird happen to me in 2015? There was silence on the line. I thought the call dropped. Then he cleared his throat. Why are you asking that? I need to know. Please. Did something happen back then that I don't remember? Another pause. You mean before or after you disappeared for 2 days? I froze. What are you talking about? He sounded irritated now. Clint, don't do this again. You pulled that stunt back then, went off the radar, turned off your phone, came back like nothing happened. You told everyone you just needed space. I figured you were having some breakdown or whatever. No, I said, my voice cracking. I don't remember any of that. He didn't answer. I pressed harder. Where did I go? You didn't tell me. You never did. You weren't curious? He sighed. You were an adult. You said you were fine. I believed you. I hung up. Not because I was angry, but because I was shaking. My vision blurred. The world felt like it was spinning slightly off axis. I had lost time before. That wasn't new. I'd just never noticed how big the gap might be. That missing 48 hours, what had I done? Where had I been? And why had I blocked it out? I started digging through my old journals. Boxes of notebooks from years ago, some filled, some empty, most unread since I wrote them. I flipped through every page, looking for gaps, looking for anything that might explain what had happened in 2015. And then I found it. A page torn out of one of the notebooks, not missing, but folded and taped to the inside of the back cover. Like I tried to hide it from myself. My own handwriting. Shaky, not like the rest of my entries. And written with a different kind of pen. It read, she said I wasn't supposed to remember. That remembering would get us both killed. But I think I already know too much. Below that, a drawing. A circle, with a snake eating its own tail. Just like the wax seal on the envelope. I dropped the notebook like it burned me. This didn't start last week. This didn't start with Josie vanishing. Something was done to me. Years ago. And the worst part? I think I let it happen. I spent the next 3 days spiraling. I barely ate. Barely slept. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and every time I passed a mirror, I half expected to see someone else staring back at me. The notebook page, my own handwriting, warning myself not to remember, felt like a door I'd cracked open but didn't dare walk through. I knew what it meant, even if I couldn't fully explain it. Something had happened to me. Something I had willingly forgotten. And now, that memory was coming back whether I liked it or not. So I went back to the only place I thought might give me a clue, the old cabin. The one Josie and I used to rent twice a year, hidden 3 hours outside town near the state border, past broken roads and woods no one bothered mapping anymore. It had been a kind of sacred spot for us, a place we could disconnect. She always said she loved how quiet it was out there. No Wi-Fi, no cell reception, just us, a fireplace, and the occasional deer. But this time, I went alone. I hadn't been there in almost 4 years. I wasn't even sure the owner would remember me, but the cabin was unlocked when I arrived. Key still under the ceramic frog on the porch, just like always. The place hadn't changed much. Same scratchy brown couch. Same squeaky floorboard near the stove. It even smelled the same. Pine wood, dust, and that faint mildew in the corners that never quite went away. But it wasn't comforting anymore. It felt staged, like someone had carefully preserved it just for this moment. As I walked through the cabin, something pulled at me. Not nostalgia. Instinct. Muscle memory. My feet moved toward the back hallway, past the coat rack, where an old bookshelf used to sit. It wasn't there now. Just empty wall. But when I pressed my hand against the paneling, I felt it give. I hesitated, then pushed harder. A hidden latch clicked. Behind it, a narrow doorway. I froze. My heart thundered so loud I could barely hear my own breathing. I had been to this cabin a dozen times with Josie, and she never once mentioned anything like this. Not even a joke. Not even a hint. But as the door creaked open, the air that spilled out from the darkness was cold, unnaturally cold, and smelled faintly of antiseptic. I pulled out my phone. No signal, of course. I turned on the flashlight and stepped inside. The room was small, windowless, concrete walls, not wood. The floor was tiled, sterile. In the center of the room, a single chair, bolted to the ground. Leather straps on the arms. Dried stains on the seat. There was a small table beside it, with a metal tray and several glass vials, all empty. Some were cracked. Others still had dried residue inside. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. This wasn't a cabin anymore. This was a lab. A place for testing. For restraint. For something else. Something I wasn't supposed to remember. In the corner of the room, buried under a thin tarp, I found a camera tripod and an old reel recorder. Wires ran up the wall into a ventilation shaft that had clearly been installed after the fact. I touched one of the leather straps on the chair and nearly threw up. Because suddenly, I remembered being in it. Strapped down. Light in my face. Voices behind the glass. A woman speaking softly, saying my name over and over again. I remembered my wrists burning, the feel of cold metal on the back of my neck, and someone whispering, "If he forgets, he survives." I stumbled backward, nearly falling. My head was splitting. My ears rang. And in that moment, I finally understood what Josie had meant when she said she left to protect me. She didn't just disappear. She escaped. We had been part of something. Voluntarily or not, we were both involved. And whatever they did to me here, whatever they tried to erase, Josie had remembered. She had carried it for years. That's why she looked so hollow when she came back. Not guilt, burden. She had carried the memory for both of us. I didn't even remember agreeing to be part of any of this. But someone had documented it. There were 3 VHS tapes in a crate near the wall, unlabeled, covered in dust, and a note taped above them, written in familiar handwriting. "Do not watch this unless you're ready to become someone else." I didn't take the tapes with me. I didn't touch anything else. I locked the cabin door behind me and drove back in silence, my mind spinning in 1,000 directions. But when I got home, as I walked up the steps to my porch, I froze. Because sitting on the welcome mat was a small box, wrapped in brown paper. Again. And this time, there was a note. "We warned you. You opened the door. You're not safe anymore." I didn't open the box. Not this time. I sat on my porch with it in my lap as the morning sun began bleeding through the trees. The note was still in my hand. Short, threatening, and final. "We warned you. You opened the door. You're not safe anymore." That would have crushed me just a week ago. Would have sent me into a spiral of fear and self-doubt. But now it felt like a script someone had handed me, and I was finally ready to stop reading from it. Because something had changed in me. Finding that room, remembering the chair, the voices, the things they did to us. It wasn't just traumatic. It was freeing. Like ripping off a bandage and finally seeing the scar underneath. Ugly, yes, but mine. Mine. And once I saw it clearly, I knew what I had to do. I drove 6 hours that day. Took back roads. Kept my phone off. Packed nothing but water and the Polaroid. My hands still shook on the wheel, but my mind was clear for the first time in years. I didn't have an exact address, just a town. Ashburn, Indiana. The same one from the return address on Derek Conley's envelope. It barely showed up on the GPS. No chain stores, no gas stations with working card readers. Just long stretches of farmland and silence. And then I saw her. Josie. Sitting on a bench outside an abandoned train depot. As if she knew I'd come. She didn't look surprised. If anything, She looked relieved. I pulled over. Got out. We didn't speak for a full minute. Just looked at each other. Her eyes were tired, but soft. She held herself like someone who'd carried a secret for too long and finally had someone to hand it to. You remembered, she said. I nodded. Not everything, but enough. She smiled, and this time it wasn't hollow. We sat together on that bench as the wind kicked dust across the parking lot. She told me everything, the whole story, no edits. About the research trial we had joined years ago, pitched as a cognitive expansion experiment. About the organization behind it. Not some underground cult, just a private defense contractor with a clean website and dirty hands. About the way they used the volunteers, us, as prototypes for psychological erasure. How they wiped trauma, then studied how we lived without it. But when Josie started to remember fragments, things that didn't make sense, they panicked. Offered her a deal, disappear, and they'd leave her alone. But she couldn't just leave me behind. They said you wouldn't remember, she whispered. That if I stayed away, you'd live a simple, peaceful life. I swallowed hard. And if you came back, they'd try to finish what they started. I reached for her hand. She flinched at first, but then let me hold it. It was warm, real, familiar. And in that second, something inside me, something buried for years, clicked back into place. I don't want peace if it means living someone else's life, I told her. I want mine, even the ugly parts. She laughed, quietly, the same hiccup laugh I hadn't heard in years, the one I thought I'd only ever hear in memory. We didn't run, not in the dramatic, movie way. There was no high-speed chase, no shootout, no coded messages hidden in song lyrics. We just moved on. Together. I deleted the threats, burned the box, cut ties with every trace of the past that wasn't mine to carry anymore. We moved to a small coastal town where no one knew our names. I started working part-time fixing bikes. Josie teaches art to kids. We grow tomatoes. We argue about dumb things like coffee brands and which movie to watch. We hold hands in public. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, when the house creaks or a car door slams too loud, I'll see her tense up or feel my own heart spike. But then we remind each other. We're here. We're safe. And we remember everything now. And the truth? It wasn't the forgetting that broke us. It was the lie that forgetting was easier. Because real love, the kind that survives silence and shadows, doesn't live in the perfect moments. It lives in the ones you survive together.